Hello, I'm Carrie Thomas. I'm a humanist funeral celebrant, and I work throughout London and the South East and wherever anyone really wants me to go. Each crematorium is different. The ones I've worked in, all of them happen to have been a maximum of 10 people who can come. Nowhere can people touch the coffin. Sometimes the curtains have to be closed. People need to sit a couple of meters apart unless they're from the same household. And sometimes that means we have to ask if chairs can be put together because they're invariably 2 meters apart to begin with. Almost all of the crematoria, in fact, all of the crematoria I've worked at, the service lengths have been somewhat reduced so people can clean the chapels in between to make them as safe as possible for those of us attending and for funeral staff, be they funeral directors or celebrants or those working in the crematorium. Most have been understanding. It's been painful for quite a few, I think, when they would have wanted and expected many more people there. But there are great facilities now with modern technology. There's webcasting in all the crematoria now. Even the ones that didn't have it a month ago are now getting it installed. So that means we can reach a wider population if there are people who, even in London, who couldn't be there. And sometimes it means people in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa can also watch where they might not previously have been able to be involved. So that has been a positive trade-off. But it is hard. And lots of people are hoping they'll be able to have a life celebration later, whenever we can gather again. But we don't know if that'll be in 6 months or a year's time. Yes, and I think there's also a way of people have managed to not so much compromise, but find a way to sort of navigate some of the difficulties. It's not possible for people to put flowers on the coffin anymore. So at a ceremony I did a few weeks back, the person whose partner had died brought a low basket, like a trug, and had that in front of the catafalque, and each person out of the 10 people who were there laid flowers in this to represent all the people who couldn't be there, to bring them in across the webcast. So that was a very poignant way of doing things. And somehow it can be quite possible to bring those 10 people who are separated around the chapel, somehow to hold that and bring them together, even though they're physically distancing from one another. And I know of other celebrants who, when they've spoken to the family and they know there are many people watching, said, would you like to actually say hello to them at the beginning? So when they've welcomed the people in the room, they've also welcomed the people and said hello to them. And all of the 10, 12 people, or however many are allowed, have turned to the camera and waved. To sort of try and bring people in from a distance. I found it initially a really big and quite painful adjustment, because we've come into this because we want to try and help and support people at one of the most difficult times in their lives. And when people come with strong ideas of what they'd really like and how they know people may have been able to do it in the past, and we'll have to say, oh, no, you won't be able to do that. No, you can't have a double slot for your ceremony. You can't have an hour. You can only have 15 minutes. No, actually, only 10 people can come. We advise that aunt not to come because she's over a certain age. If you're self-isolating, it's not sensible for you to come. And that was really hard to begin with. And what's been interesting, I think, is that we've perhaps got a bit stronger about knowing that's what we have to do, and it's important that we boundary it for families and for friends. So being able to present them with these are the parameters, this is all we can do at the moment, but within that we can have some creativity, but we might have to adjust your original ideas. I've certainly gone on a journey with it. And I think, yeah, I think some families and friends have realised that we're fortunate that in other countries they have stopped funerals altogether, and we haven't done that completely in this country. Some boroughs have, and they've gone to direct cremations, but it hasn't been a countrywide choice here. So one way for families to look at it is to consider this might be a two-part thing, that they might be having a smaller funeral now, but they can plan and think about having a life celebration, a memorial at a later date, perhaps in a year's time, where they can gather more people. And it will be a different ceremony, because this is the intense time of mourning and loss. But if they've got, say, 10 people here now, and they want to webcast it, they know they're reaching more people who can be there remotely, sort of a virtual congregation. And another way of doing it, because sometimes those who are bereaved aren't comfortable about the filming of the person who has died's funeral, it feels a bit strange for them. What I've done is be able to say to the wider community that the time for reflection, the point of formal farewell will be at about this time. Like today it was at about 2:40, I told people. And so those who would have liked to have been here knew that. And if they wanted to play a particular song that this woman liked, or if they wanted to light a candle for her, they could do that at that time and reflect on her. And they would know that we would be doing the same thing, would be reflecting on her at that moment too. I think you need to be able to have not just a lot of compassion, but be able to, sounds very trite, doesn't it, really, to connect with people and to be able to fully empathise for where someone is, and to take time to really listen. I think listening skills are quite paramount. And with that, being able to ask questions that might tease out some information, because sometimes people don't know what they remember. And I know where I've sat with families in the past, and now it tends to be over the phone or on Zoom. People often talk to me afterwards or write and say, actually, that was really useful for me too. I hadn't remembered that thing, and although parts of it were upsetting, I came away with a lighter heart because I'd remembered some of the wonderful things about my brother or whomever. So listening, being able to question carefully. At the moment, there's a lot of boundary setting as well, which, as we've said, we're not used to in many ways. But it's really, it's care. It's you're looking after someone at the most vulnerable time, and it's not, it's making sure we honour that and we thoroughly respect how they feel about the person who's died.